Final Fantasy VII is my all-time favorite game. I recognize it's not the best game in the world. In fact, it's probably not even the best game in the Final Fantasy franchise, but nonetheless, it is my favorite game. So when I launched the Final Fantasy VII Remake in my PlayStation 4, my anxiety levels were pretty high. Not only was I nervous for whether this game could live up to its own lofty expectations, I was nervous if it would just be a good game. Square Enix have taken on possibly the most impossible task in the modern gaming industry. Remaking and reimagining what is one of the most iconic titles in the gaming industry. Without Final Fantasy VII, there is no Uncharted series. There is no The Last of Us. There is no storytelling the way that we know it today. It was the first. So, I've come into this review, and specifically I've come into this game trying to find out two things. Has Square Enix actually lived up to their old reputation and been able to pull off the impossible? And the second is whether this game is appealing to both old-timers of the original Final Fantasy VII game and newcomers not knowing anything about it previously. By the end of this review, I hope to have answered those two questions. We have 5 categories to rate out of 10, giving us a total score of 50. The plot takes place in Midgar, encompassing the first 5 hours of the original game and expanding it. In fact, the use of the word expanding is underselling what's been done here. Every character, story beat and location has been focused on and completely blown up. The plot is well paced without ever dragging on or feeling rushed. It allows you to feel the hard-hitting moments and can leave you puzzled while slowly unraveling itself. The main theme of the plot is that of destiny, or rather, trying to break it. You really get a sense in this game that the game itself, as well as the development team, are really trying to jump off of its predetermined rails. The characters all feel well grounded as well, and progress through the game is a very natural thing. The decisions they make are appropriate and don't come off as though the game is forcing you to make them just to get to the next story beat. It flows together organically, and each story beat is a result of each decision made, as opposed to things just happening because the script says it should. There is only one major hiccup with regards to the plot of the Final Fantasy VII Remake, and that's its ending. Whether you know the story from the original game or not isn't too concerning, as this ending just feels out of place regardless. If you're an old fan, you'll probably hate it. If you're a newcomer, it's probably gonna confuse you. Everything in the game, despite being magical, feels real within its own world. It feels grounded. However, the ending leaves a lot to be desired as it escalates very quickly and very randomly. I should point out that I don't hate it. In fact, I have an appreciation for it, but it definitely feels out of place and somewhat spoils the rest of the experience. The plot of the Final Fantasy VII Remake, for me, gets a 7 out of 10. The gameplay can be defined by everything you do as a player outside of the normal combat system, and this game nails it. Your movement in the game feels solid, it feels weighted. The side quests in the game help to enhance the immersion and help its world building. There aren't 100 fetch quests, and most of what you do feels real, not tedious. While moving around in cities or making your way through a dangerous area, the NPCs feel like real people, having real emotions and responding in a real fashion. The minigames are a welcome addition, and at times rage-inducing, which I love. This particular one is the only one I actually had trouble with. Stupid head. They are all fun and engaging, and I wish I had more opportunity within the story to do these more often. In saying that, the dev team went a little too far with an old minigame. The bike chases. They are far too long and way too tedious. What was a light-hearted fun minigame has now become a chore, and it's hard to get through on your first playthrough. I should also mention the camera as well. It's a little intrusive on the gameplay and can at times be annoying to maneuver. It's not immersion breaking by any means, but is annoying enough to mention it. The gameplay of Final Fantasy VII Remake gets a 7 out of 10. The combat system has seen the biggest change compared to the original, although an argument could be made for the graphics. But let me tell you, this is quite possibly my favourite combat system ever. There is something for everyone in this system, and there really is no right way to use it. Of course, there is an optimized way to use it, but you can do your own thing and still see success, which encourages more people to try it out. From a glance, it looks to be a hack and slash action game, but once you spend more than 5 minutes with it, you quickly learn it has a lot more depth to it. Yes, you can spend your time mashing the square button and you will eventually find success, but it's very slow and very boring. Instead, the entire system is based around the ATB, a mechanic brought over and modernized from the original game. Once you've built up an ATB charge, you gain access to your abilities. The use of abilities, magic, and even items is locked behind the ATB, which is a brilliant mechanic designed to keep you engaged for longer without boring yourself with the same actions. Want to deal some massive damage? Check. Want to cast some magic? Oof, got that too. Oh crap, need a heal, need a heal, need a heal, need a heal. The Materia system is also a mechanic from the original game, and it brings with it a similar level of customization. You can equip and combine different materia for different effects, so if you have a certain playstyle, you can tailor the system to your needs. It is, in effect, a near flawless combat system. There is no real way to break the game with it. The combat system of Final Fantasy VII Remake gets a 10 out of 10. The music in the remake is a double-edged sword for me. It is a brilliant OST and really enhances the experience of the game. Unlike other games, it never overpowers a scene and simply allows you to feel what you're supposed to. So if it's a double-edged sword, what's the other half of that edge? Well, I don't remember any of it. I genuinely couldn't tell you what track was playing at any point of the game. It is an OST that amalgamates itself into the game flawlessly, but I don't want to listen to it outside of the game like I would with other OSTs. Now, some may say that's exactly what a soundtrack is supposed to do, and I would agree if this was a movie, but it's a video game, and the OST should be memorable, and it just isn't for me. The music in Final Fantasy VII Remake gets a 7 out of 10. Now, I hate talking about graphics in video games. How pretty something is has no relevance as to whether a game is good graphically. Instead, if the graphics are jarring and break the immersion from the world, that is when the graphics in a game has fallen apart. I can play Minecraft and say that the game is graphically very good, because everything in it fits that world. It isn't jarring to look at, even if it's just a bunch of blocks. Similarly, older games are also fine to me, even if they haven't aged well, as they belong in those worlds. Nothing in them feels out of place. With that being said, the remake does look spectacular. In fact, in terms of character graphics on the main cast, it is probably now the industry standard. The many close-up shots on the main cast allows us to see and feel exactly what they're thinking and experiencing without the use of words. There are games in the past that have achieved this to an extent, but not to this degree. I mean, look at Cloud in this shot, and without any words spoken, without any other visual cues, you can understand his emotions by the simple movements in his eyes, his eyebrows, even his lips. In what is essentially a character-driven narrative, the graphics of the game look to enhance our immersion of the world. I will say that the game does fall flat in one area though. Throughout most locations, there are what seems to be texture bugs, and although not game-breaking, they are very noticeable. The graphics of Final Fantasy VII Remake gets a 9 out of 10. Now, if you weren't following the scores as they were coming out, that gives the remake a healthy 42 out of 50. It's not a perfect game, but it is pretty damn good. This brings me back to my first two questions of the video, and the two things that I wanted to find out most of all about this game. Has Square Enix managed to pull off the impossible? And will new time players and old time players enjoy this game? I'm interested to hear what you think of these two down in the comments below. Now, I can't answer on behalf of new time players as I'm an old time fan, but I think that Square Enix succeeded. What do you think?